Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
If you had to pick one issue that gives you the most trouble or causes you the most stress in your practice, what would that be? And look, I know this may be a loaded question in that it assumes that there is a particular challenge that's giving you trouble or causing you stress in the first place. And if you do have a specific issue in mind, it might be, depending on how you're doing, a 1 or 2 out of a 10 on the stress scale. Or it could be something that borders on catastrophic for your practice. It might also be a case where your answer to this question changes depending on when you're asked. In any event, in an effort to service our public, you, to the best of our ability, it's critical that our company stays aware of the biggest problems or stressors that dentists in private practice face. And beyond surveys and statistical data, one of my favorite sources for this type of information is my sales department, specifically new customer sales. And this makes sense when you think about it. These folks are getting real info about current pain points straight from the source. And to that point, during a recent meeting I was having with our expansion executive, Jeff Santone, who many of you will have heard if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, he pointed up that statistically, the biggest challenge, stressor, problem, whatever you want to call it for the average owner dentist right now in 2023 is still staff. And that might be finding staff, hiring staff, and keeping adequately productive staff or staff members. And it was with that in mind that we created this week's episode. I'm going to be joined by Jeff, and we're going to discuss this subject in depth. Why this may be happening to you. It may not be why you'd think it is. And most importantly, what to do about it. So I think we have you all set up over there, Jeff, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I hear you great. Okay, so let's just jump right into this because it was funny. I was not expecting that answer to be the big thing that you guys are running into pretty consistently with newer clients, where people reaching out for help. But when you said staff, right, what would be the top 3 issues with relation to staff?
Yeah. And the number one thing, and we've been hearing it now probably for a bit, is just they can't find anybody.
Can't find adequate staff.
Yeah, people aren't applying. No one's putting in for the position. There aren't even candidates to interview.
I mean, are they now again, I don't mean to dig into this too hard before you answer the 3 things, sorry, but when you talk to these folks, are they advertising adequately in a lot of cases? Or?
Yeah, at least they feel they are. And I don't get into it too much when I ask them, but that is like the top thing. And then, we tend to find the second one, which was always true, even when I was a practice owner, the qualified level of staff, when you're thinking like, the people that are coming in, just they're not cutting it these days, and they're not.
So like labor quality.
Yeah, labor quality is one. And then, the third thing, if I had to put my finger on it, I hear times where they're like, I had staff, but they left for more money, or they left to go, be at home with their kids. But leaving for more money, I hear as like the third thing, and not nearly as loud as there just aren't enough people.
All right. So if I break this down then, A, it's not enough people.
Right.
B, the people that they are getting just don't cut it. Labor quality is bad. And C, people are leaving.
Yeah.
So you're hearing that a good amount.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it becomes this like cyclical thing, right? I get guys in and then they leave, and then I can't find them, but they're not really good, but then they left for more money. So it goes round and round.
Interesting.
In circles. Yeah. And we hear it a lot, and there are a lot of things that we dig into when we talk about their staff problems, but for the most part, there's many other things that led up to the reason that they can't find staff in the first place.
And I should mention, normally I do a little bio on you here, but this episode intro just led right into you.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't heard Jeff talk before, if you've never heard Jeff interviewed on the show, Jeff is our expansion executive, as I mentioned, but Jeff's also owned 2 dental practices, a specialty practice and a general dental office. So Jeff has a lot of experience in this area. And I guess that kind of leads me to sort of a take on this first question, which is, how do these problems compare? And again, you were a trained MGE client at the time, right? You'd done your power program training, but how do these problems you're seeing with these new folks comparing to the problems you guys were having in the practice?
I think the qualified thing is always a thing.
Okay.
Always. Like, it was always, even for us, it was a thing. You'd get guys who said they had their dental assistant but couldn't name the instruments. Or you'd say someone that knew how to pick up the phone and they've greeted, or they've used a software system but don't really know how to use a computer. So So you always run into the qualified issue.
Sure.
But we never ran into, we just can't find people.
So there was always somebody applying.
Yeah. And that's, I think, because we were trained to always be looking.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tend to find most doctors don't do enough is just like, they should always be hiring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether you need somebody or not, you should always be hiring. By the time they need somebody, it's too late, and they're going to now be willing to compromise on what they would take, or they might negotiate into a range that they're not happy with, or they might have a disagreement with. So when I was a practice owner, we always had that problem of, they're not qualified, you know. But
I mean, you didn't hire those, I assume.
no, but absolutely not.
Let me hire some non-qualified
but,
people.
But this gets back to, like, I think episodes we talk, there is no such thing as a great staff member. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not out there to be found. Like, you must develop them. You must train them. You have to turn them into a great staff member.
They have to have the basic raw material to start with.
There's good people. There was a lot of good people. Mm-hmm. But what we learned here at MG, that's what taught us how to make them into great staff members. Mm-hmm. So we always had that, but I haven't run into, we were never at a loss for finding people.
So you always had applicants.
Always had applicants.
And you're hearing that as the number one problem. Not enough applicants.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I didn't hear that from our colleagues when we were doing this. When we owned practices, they would say this, well, we don't know where to find people. We can't find it. Like, you still hear that. Like, you would hear that. And now that we're through this whole, 3 years of COVID and people mass exodus out of practices, and now this is what we hear when we talk to guys. Prior to that, it was insurance. It was money. It was, all these other problems with the practice, not enough new patients. And we still hear that.
Sure.
But ultimately, it's, I want to do something with you guys. I just don't have the staff, and I can't find them, and I can't, and you're always like, well,
Well, now, so let's say you've run into, if you take the last few people you talked to, I just can't find staff.
Yeah.
So, if you give me an example, let's say pick one of those out of your mind, keep it anonymous, obviously. Yeah. But what did this person do? Because obviously, when you have a problem, you're going to try to do something to solve that problem. Yeah. What was this person doing to try to solve it? Were they just sitting with it? I guess I just have a problem, or were they trying to do something about it?
You know what? That's a great question, and I think what I find is most people try to do something and then they just give up.
Like, what type of things were they trying?
They would look to place ads and get people, and their frustration is people respond and they say they're going to show up, then they don't show up. And I mean, that happens a lot.
Sure.
And, and then they got to cope with it, And so most doctors I find are just finding ways to make the existing staff cope with the extra work.
So that's what they're doing. Yeah. So I've got 3 people at the front. We're humming along pretty well. We're a busy office. I lose one.
Yeah.
I can't replace them, so I basically have the other 2 do more.
Right. Yeah.
Am I paying them more for it?
No. And that's what leads to number 3. It's like
so then one of those 2 go,
I'm going to get $1 more an hour, and if I'm going to work this hard, then that's what I'm going to go, and I'm going to go do that. So we tend, like, I think the biggest thing I run into is non-understanding of a good ratio of staff, like admin support staff, to the production team. Okay. A lot of guys I talk to are so understaffed, it's just not even funny.
So they're heavily weighted towards providers, but they don't have enough administrative staff to keep those providers busy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Okay.
And something's going to get slipped, or missed, or through the cracks. Reactivation becomes a huge issue. Patient retention's a huge issue. Missed phone calls, huge issue.
But it's interesting about you mentioned that, because there's issues you have that are obvious,
right?
Like no one's answering the phone,
right? Yeah.
Ring, no one's answering the phone. It's going to voicemail, or you're having to have it forwarded to your dental assistant's Bluetooth while they're working with you with a patient, right? Because you're so short-staffed. Right. And those types of things become obvious when there's no provider or no staff member.
Yeah.
But the whole reactivation retention thing, that's sort of like, it's almost like perio. I mean, fun, not to make a weird, allusion there, right. But it's the person doesn't really even know they have it, until it's bad.
Yeah. And it's they're happy. I'm getting 50 new patients a month. And I was like, yeah, but you haven't added hygiene. So that you lost 50 patients. Where are they? Yeah, but we're busy. Hygiene's busy. So we get into that. But to answer your other question, like what have we come across?
Yeah.
Like there's not much you can do. And I don't want to say there's not much you can do. Production wise, like if you need a dental assistant, like you can't farm that out somewhere.
Sure.
Right. Like you need that. If you need a hygienist, you're not far. And there is some quality and credentialing that needs to occur with those types of positions.
Sure.
But that's not the need that I hear. Like, of course we're going to hear about hygienists and of course we're going to hear about dental assistants, but the front area is something that we hear a lot of. Like, I don't have the team to come and do this and I need to hire them. And so I was talking with a doctor and two of them actually, and they farmed out the front desk a bit. Like, hey, we're short staffed, so I'm going to hire a call service.
Okay.
And both of their reviews of the call service were, don't do it. Like,
so this was somebody to just answer the phone?
yeah, like when they were busy and they couldn't answer the phone, it would go to a call service.
Like an answering service?
Yeah, like an answering service.
But like, so like my after hours service. But this is during my business hours while I'm working.
Yeah. Okay. And both doctors.
So I find these things painful.
So do I.
Just with you come from the business world as well into healthcare.
Right.
It's painful when you hear this type of stuff. That's just painful.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's super painful. And at first I thought, like, I didn't know what I was. They said I did this, and I was expecting them to be like, it was amazing. And both of them were like, it was awful. Like, they would take messages and get it wrong, or I wouldn't get the message till too late, or they have access to my schedule, but they refuse to put somebody on it because they can't. And fair enough, they can't think with, well, that's that type of procedure. I could put a new patient there.
So they're getting new patient calls too.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't even buy, if that was what I was doing,
I know.
and maybe I'm being dramatic here. If I couldn't answer my own phone, why in the world should I even market?
That and so that was that one doctor's conclusion. Like what he said was like, I was better off having the phone call be missed completely and have the chance of them leaving a message on my own machine than turning it over to that call service.
But again, with a new patient, in a lot of cases, they're
not going to do it.
They're going to call the next office.
He didn't say it was cheap, and he just didn't think it was great. After hours, it might be a different story, but that's something that has been attempted, and I just don't think at the end of the day, it's a great Band-Aid if you need it. But you need to replace like your human capital at the front.
You need
desk.
staff.
You need staff.
So, okay. So let's say I'm one of these folks you're talking to. I can't find anybody, and I placed some ads and people said they were going to show up and they didn't show up, which is that objection I've heard. Well, I started hearing it a lot in 2020, but that I've heard more than ever.
Yeah.
I scheduled this person for an interview and they just don't show.
Right.
Like, okay. But do people get into the frame of mind that, and maybe you mentioned this a little bit earlier, where they just go, I guess I'm just not going to be able to handle this, and I guess I'm just stuck this way?
Yeah. And then they make it go. They cope, and that's how it is. And we run into that. I would see we run into the result of that more than we talk to guys that are complaining about not finding staff. So you end up seeing that that's what they've done, and they've just stopped complaining, right? They have their two front desk, and that's it. And then you find out you have two front desk, and you have a doctor and two hygienists. I was like, you're severely understaffed.
Right.
Like, you need at least one more person, ideally really almost two, maybe possibly three, to run that type of office.
With just, I mean, it depends on the amount of volume. Right. Yeah.
Right. So you tell doctors that, and they all of a sudden, I know it, I knew it. Everyone's been telling me I got to keep my costs down, and I've got to, and so that's like you start running into all these like other issues in the practice that are forcing staff volume or staffing to be low in general too, and that also unfortunately plays a part in it, is costing.
Yeah, but I think so. You hit on 2 points there.
Yeah,
and one of them is actually a point I'm covering in the overhead course we're filming right now for DDS Success. That's shameless plug. Our online platform, DDS Success. I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. We do on-demand training there. Anyway, but one of the issues when you're trying to cut overhead is you see people cut things that actually make them money, right? They're not looking at what doesn't have exchange value, because that's what I'm going to cut.
Yeah.
Like, I've got this employee, they're performing poorly. okay, I need to replace that person or cut that person out of the office, right? To let them go.
Yeah.
But they'll cut things that don't necessarily, or they'll cut things that are making them money. So my marketing is making me money, but it's a lot of money to spend. So I'm going to cut that. And then I wonder why I'm making now even less money. And then it's basically sort of like a little snowball rolling down a hill. The problem becomes bigger, right? That's the first thing. But the second thing you and I were talking about a bit earlier is this is all going on for these folks in an environment that's pretty inflationary for the last 3.5 years.
Right.
I'll probably do a separate update episode on that, but I think I just came up with since March of 2020, overall inflation. My papers here.
Yeah, there you
can
go.
tell I slightly prepared. Overall, consumer price index, right, is currently at 18.8%, 19%.
Wow.
So if you had $1, what cost you $1 in March 2020 now costs you $1.19.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you apply that to a staff member, so it's roughly a 20% increase. If you were paying that staff member $20, you're now paying that staff member $24, just for them to be able to keep up. So they're doing this in an inflationary environment. And I guess that's where, because I saw this happen with a couple clients, and I don't know if you've gone this deep with these folks you're talking to, these newer clients. Are you finding that when they're advertising that they're not meeting the mark financially?
Yeah, I find that most of them don't realize who they're competing with.
Okay.
And so they're not checking who their competition is. They go out and they check the board for dental assistant. They see everyone's posting the job for $22, but Whole Foods is paying $30 an hour.
So they're just thinking inside the dental industry.
They're stuck in the dental industry, and they don't realize that, and you did a whole segment on it at Owners Conference. The labor supply is it's just not there, so.
Right. This was, I think, I don't know if I did that in a podcast, but basically the way the current United States demographics work out, you've got a lot of the baby boomer generation leaving the workforce. So it's created this sort of vacuum.
Right.
So and it looks like the labor supply it'll go up a little bit over the next few years, and then it'll actually be lower than it is now. Based on projections by 2032.
Right.
Yeah. Which is pretty crazy.
Which is crazy. So you're competing with the likes of big business that offer better benefits and paid vacations and 401ks and, an ability to maybe even have what is perceived to be a career on a standard, 9 to 5, and, there are no working hour late. And so signing bonuses.
Right.
They just don't, they haven't thought that that's a problem, right?
They're not thinking outside the dental box.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're right. Nobody's thinking with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. At all.
Yeah. So we run into that. But then the other thing you run into is actually a lot of these guys do look at the bottom line a bit, and you find that they're well within their employee threshold of what they should be paying as a percentage. And that's always a problem when you're participating and you're an in-network provider. Like immediately, you're understaffed. Like without even thinking, like.
Now let me explain that, because I know what you're talking about. But all right, so I've gone over in the overhead episode that your payroll, including employer taxes, like what you're paying on top of the employee's pay, should not exceed 22.5% of your gross revenues. Your collections. Okay. So if you're collecting $100 a month, you shouldn't be paying a payroll higher than $22,500, right? Number one, but that does not include the doctor owner, and it does not include associates, but it does include the office manager, hygienist, dental assistants, everybody else. So I think what you said there was kind of profound in the sense of if you're in a lot of managed care, right, and you're within that 22.5% threshold, then you're guaranteed to be overpaying. Or underpaying, so rather.
Yeah.
You're underpaying. Because if an office is doing $100 a month and they're in PPOs, they're in network, they're most likely really producing closer to 2, maybe 180. Yeah. And if they're paying $22,500 in payroll, they're way understaffed.
Yeah, way understaffed.
Yeah.
And so then it kind of, like you said, it's just a snowball effect, right? So I can't afford more staff, so I keep my staff tight, and I overtrain them on multiple positions. And if I lose one, we are really in trouble. But I'm not paying them really the value of everything they're doing, and they're stressed, they're frustrated, they're underpaid.
So I'm just trying to imagine then the office down the street's
Yes.
offering $2 more an hour. I'm out.
I'm out, you know? And doctors, when I'm talking at the free seminars, and thank goodness, it's just mostly doctors that are there now. They're all, I can see their face like, oh. But it's true. What they forget is, they're a staff member too, and they're stressed and they're overworked and they're underpaid. And so they're not, sometimes I find they're not thinking with it because it's like, hey man, I haven't paid myself in 3 months. I'm lucky that I could keep these guys, that I'm paying them. And I would love more people, Jeff, but one, I can't find them, and certainly not at the rate I'm offering.
Right.
And I can't afford them even if I could, And so you run into this cart before the horse type deal where everyone feels that staffing is the problem, but they never really get into, well, what's causing all of that?
Well, what kind of job are you offering?
Yeah.
I get, that's an interesting point, because there was a time last year, and I forgot if I talked about this on one of these episodes. It might have been in one of our seminars. You talk about stuff a lot, especially the last 3 years between video content, podcast content, seminars. You don't forget where you said it. But we had a client that was having trouble finding a hygienist, which, okay, that's not exactly a news flash. A lot of people do, right? And so I went and looked in his zip as to what, on Indeed, what's being offered for a hygienist out there. So he's offering $55 an hour, which pre-pandemic, that would have been great money.
Phenomenal.
That area was paying in the 40s at the pre-pandemic, pre-2020.
Yeah.
So this is 2021 or 22, I forget when. He's offering 55 and he's getting 0 bites. Wow. So I go on Indeed, because this is something I think people don't want to look at.
Sure.
So I go on Indeed and I find his ad, like, cool. And then I find 5 other corporate office ads looking for a hygienist. They're offering a $4,000 signing bonus and $60 to $65 an hour.
Wow.
And you can go, oh, well, yeah, they went to a corporate office, whatever. Well, they're also facing that same now 20% inflation they're having to deal with.
Yeah.
So what do you expect them to do?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
So the problem, because it's sort of like a combo of a couple different things: rising costs, lowered reimbursement, and if assuming that the reason they're not attracting prospects is they're not offering enough. Sure. This is just going to get worse.
Yeah.
If they don't do something different about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's absolutely true, and that's where we start to come in, and we're like, look, you're always going to have staff problems, no matter what. Everyone's going to have staff problems. Sure. It never goes away. There's always something, but being able to do a few things right should always prevent, the last person who's answering the phone to be the last person answering the phone, and now we got nobody. Like you should be able to be in a position where you're always hiring,
right?
No matter what. And we do this all the time at the New Patient Workshop. I run a scenario at the end where people are hiring, and I give them this scenario where I say, look, you interview 3 people, you interview 50 people, and you really like 3.
Sure.
And you bring each of them in for a single day, hire them just for one day for a quote unquote working interview, and who are you going to hire out of this, right? And I'm setting it up because they've all hired the wrong person because they haven't actually tested them. But as person number 1 who you liked makes 100 phone calls, gets 10 people to the scheduler for to get rescheduled for reactivation. Person number 2 makes 150 and only gets 10 people, same number, to the scheduler. Person number 3, who you were going to hire anyway, regardless, you were just doing this because you've been told you have to do this, manages to break the phone by 10 a.m. and disappears on a lunch break, never to return. Sure. You find out a lot of stuff, right? So then I ask him, well, who do you hire? Number 3 is out. They already quit. And they all raise one finger, either 1 or 2. And it's always a joke. I was like, you're all fired as executives. You should have hired both. These are 2 great people. You don't know who's going to make it. Why are we going to sort it out now? Overhire. Someone's not going to make it in a week.
That's true. And also, next week, one of them go home and find out their partner's cheating on them, and now they're a disaster, and they're leaving town to go live with their parents. Yeah, you never know.
You never know. And so, we were always overstaffed, always. Because, and once we were fully staffed, we slowed down our hiring process to 2
But
interviews.
I wouldn't call it overstaffed.
No, because
you always had, because what I remember is you always had people sort of in the wings,
That's right.
off to the side in training.
That's right.
That you could sort of plug in.
And because people would go, or some of the staff went back to school and you would always have somebody. And as you're growing, you're going to want more people. So we were never in a position where we had a want,
Right.
like I must have. And of course, there's instances where your lead surgical assistant may have to go, and okay, so you cope for a little bit, but the person I've been training comes up and takes the position, and now I'm looking for a new surgical assistant instead of a front desk. It's not,
and I've lost some long-term people,
Yeah.
just like you did back then. I mean, I've lost people like, I could never lose this person,
Right.
and then you lose them
Yeah.
for whatever reason. They have to move back
Right.
closer to family or whatever, right? And you think you're never going to recover,
Yeah.
but if you do it right, you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where nobody likes to hear that answer. Like, you just need to keep hiring. They're like, Jeff, I've got no money. I can't find the right people. No one's coming in. I don't have the time to do interview.
Sure.
That's also a big one you find out too, is like, I'm running this and I'm doing that and I'm picking up the phone. And I was like, hey man, I get it. I know. Then you should
Have a friend come help you
Yeah.
for a week or two till you get it.
Block an hour at the end of the day on Wednesday, and that's when you do it.
Right.
And so it is unfortunate. I was like, but while you may not have the time and you don't think you have the resources, like, you're going to be bankrupt in 3 months. So like, what's your alternative?
Sure.
Like, we got to make this go. Right. So they always like, yes, you're right, but I still don't have money. That's ultimately what it always comes down to. I don't have money. I don't have the funds for this. Forget about finding great people, because
Right.
how can they compete from $50 an hour to 65?
Right.
I mean, you're talking about an extra $30,000 a year, at a full-time job, 2,000 hours a year, $15, where am I going to get that money is always, and now I'm like, you're sitting on it. You're sitting on a gold mine. You're looking at the wrong thing,
I mean, kind of, if I were, because, if you were to be asked thumbnail, and you and I can put together a little list here for folks. So let's say someone listening today.
Yeah.
Is in that situation.
Sure.
They are having trouble finding staff. They feel like they can't pay the going rate in their area, or if they do, they're going to bankrupt themselves.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah.
Right. And for me, and you can chime in however you want on this. To me, it's pretty simple. One, I would want to make sure, obviously I have to have an adequate number of staff to service my public.
Sure.
As well as to continuously support expansion.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have, let's say I've got enough front desk to keep front desk people to keep the schedule booked, but I don't have enough to continuously chase after my patients that need reactivated. Right. Well, that's a problem.
Yes.
Right. But for me, it would be probably the first place I would start with a lot of folks. Obviously, I'd want the marketing to come on pretty strong.
Yes.
Right. I want to make sure I'm getting an adequate flow of new patients, which, shameless plug, you should check out the new patient workshop. Jeff is one of the main speakers there. Put the link to it on the episode webpage. Got to throw it in there. But if I'm getting an adequate number of new patients, probably the next thing I would do, I'd pull in a bunch of new patients. I'd start reactivating patients any old way, somehow, while I dumped plans if I was in plans.
Yeah.
Because that's just, if you forced our company to try to survive by delivering the same thing on 50% of the income, right? I'd have to let people go, or I'd have to close my doors. Well, I just wouldn't do it, because the idea of someone outside of my business telling me what I could charge, I mean, that's, I hate to use the word, it's socialistic to a degree. It is. I know it's not. It's not government controlled in this case, but the idea that some other company is going to tell me what I can and can't charge, the market should tell me what I can and can't charge.
Right.
Like if I charge, like, you want to start charging $5,000 for a crown? Some people might go, yeah, no way, man. I'm not paying that much, but you could do it.
Someone will, though.
Yeah,
Someone's going to buy it.
They may not pay for it, but you could do it. But so the market should tell you what you should charge.
That's right.
Right. So, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't charge, you don't raise your fees, you're going to price yourself out of the market. You're going to end up with the inability to, support expansion, pay your staff or whatever. So people need to really get out of plans.
Yeah.
They need to make sure their fees are actually adequate, which we talked about ad nauseum, right? And to that end, like, I know I hate throwing too many downloads in an episode, but let's just throw it out there in case folks haven't listened to this before. If you do want to do something about your fees and make sure your fees are correct for your area, I recommend you check out the Wasserman Guide. We have no business relationship with the Wasserman Guide, but it's the most accurate assessment I've seen, where it tells you what you should be charging for your zip code. Number one. Number two, if you want to get out of plans, you can check out our fees and plans analysis. It's a free service, Jeff, where you and your team actually go over what's happening in their office and kind of help them figure out how to get out of plans.
Right.
Then you're actually getting paid what you're worth,
Right.
then you can actually afford the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see, this is one of those things where I don't see it getting any better if people don't do anything about it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not getting any better if you don't do anything about it. And to that end, you have to, they really just have to start looking a little bit of like where they could be more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's also part of the problem. We get a lot of phone calls for people that need help, want help. And when I ask them what's the number one thing you'd like to improve in the practice, it always comes, you hear a lot of staff. I need more staff. I want more staff. But then when you dig into their numbers, you find out that they're wasting a lot of opportunities and they could afford more staff if they could, one, get more people to say yes to their treatment and not what the insurance allows.
Sure.
And two, not get ripped off by insurance.
Right.
So that they hire less staff based off of actual collections. Like they're not wrong.
I have to be careful not to ask you about Delta Dental.
Yeah, that's not good.
Because Jeff will just go off for 30 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
So let's just forget
Yeah,
it.
stay away
Sorry.
from
I saw you
Delta.
go in that
No,
direction
don't
when
go
you
there.
talked about insurance companies.
Don't get me
Okay,
down.
go ahead.
And then, and then you need to get better at training and getting your staff to be productive team members. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the practice that lead to your staff problem. And, that's what we're doing here. That's what we did. I mean, if you're lucky, if you're a good office, if you presented $100,000 worth of treatment, you did 50 of it, which there's no way you did. But let's just say, well, that's $50,000 left. Even if it's insurance adjusted, that's $50,000.
Sure.
Right? So if you could get another 10, 20, 50, 25 of it, there's a staff member. Easy staff member, right?
More than a staff member.
If you could do better than 23% new patient phone call to actual new patient conversion rate, then you're going to get more opportunities to present.
Yeah, so the lost income due to inefficiencies
are adding to this problem.
Right, and then not getting paid what you're worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they must get rid of the qualified person. Like this idea. We talked about this. The arbitrary.
The idea, not get rid of qualified people.
No. The idea of that I must qualify them before I'm going to bring them
I
on.
need 5 years of experience with Dentrix.
You need to know how to code,
Well, we did an episode on this.
Yeah,
where you and I were talking
right?
about you guys hired a bunch of people who had no training.
Yeah.
And you were zero dental
we
experience.
loved it.
And you were able to bring them up the line because everybody had no dental experience at one point in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that needed some type of certificate, then you've got
Of course.
a little bit of a right.
Yeah, if you need an X-ray certification or whatever.
Yeah, but for the most part, it's interesting what you'll find are some of the solutions to this problem. Like I've heard just this morning, I'm looking for help with getting better reimbursement from insurances, and we're like, fees? They're like, no, how do I collect my money from insurance?
What you mean, like, how do I get the insurance company to pay me?
Yeah. And I was like, wait, that's not your problem, right? Like, the problem is that you participate in the first place, and my staff don't know how to do it. Of course, they don't know how to do it. You've got one person answering the phone who's also your assistant. What else are they going to do for you?
Right.
Like, this is insane, right? So, there's a lot of issues that will stem out of those two inefficiencies, and staff are a huge part of that.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and we haven't even gotten into if they have somebody on their team that shouldn't be. That's a problem staff member, how that could be blowing off good staff, which we haven't even gone there.
We haven't forget about that.
Yeah. I mean, but I guess probably what I'd recommend if someone's listening. So let's say this is you're sitting there and you go, I just can't figure my way out of this. And first off, the first thing I would say, if someone's become apathetic about this is just the way it is or whatever. Okay, well, you're going to be too far gone that no matter what I say is going to help you. Like you're just going to go find, whatever. And I really hope you're not there.
Yeah.
Right. Or B, you go, yeah, I'd love to get some help, but help isn't real.
Right.
Because that's the other thing. Sometimes you might tell somebody, well, you need to get out of plans. And they go, well, that's great. I'd love to learn how to fly too, but that's never going to happen. Right.
Right.
So first off, here's what I will say.
Yeah.
It is totally possible to get out of plans. It is totally possible to get paid what you're worth. And it is totally possible for you to have a good team.
Yeah.
That is just, I take that as a base assumption. That is possible. Okay. Because we have people who do it all the time. And it's not like these people are, they're, the best people and they're all members of Mensa or what. No, these are just good, hardworking, everyday private dentists just like you.
Yep.
Okay. So there is possibility for help. Okay. So now as far as what would solve your problem, Because again, you might be charging too little. You might have a problem staff member. You might have all these different things. That's where you talk to someone like Jeff. Okay. And you figure out, okay, here's what's going on with me. Can you help me? Because that's the other thing too. And this is where I think we differ as a company than a lot of other companies. Like there are some people you just don't sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we just can't help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most of the time, the only people we're not going to sign up are someone who's just, I know everything and there's nothing you do to help me. Well, good. We agree. Bye. See you later.
Right.
But you got to pop out of that. If you feel like if you want help, we can help you. Right. So I guess that's what I'd recommend. But I want to at least have people get the idea you don't have to live this way.
No, you don't. You certainly don't. And you can have a phenomenal team. And clients here do it every day. I've seen them. They come down. They're amazing. And they're made into phenomenal team members.
Right.
Like they're trained. They started wherever they started. But
also the owner and the office manager are trained as executives too, because you can't have a great team with terrible execs.
That's right. Yeah. They themselves are great staff members.
Right.
Like the doctor has become a great staff member.
Right.
They knows the role. They know how to do it. And so, it's night and day on their executive training. You see some of the guys come on and give their success for like our free seminar or a new patient. And they sat in all those meetings and they, what made your office successful? Is it your clinical skill set? Like, no, it's this executive skill set I got now, like how to get these guys in, how to attract the right people.
Yeah. Cause we're already assuming they're a decent clinician.
They're
otherwise,
fantastic,
exactly.
So you got to get out of your own way sometimes and just bite the bullet and know that maybe you don't know and, come find out. Honestly, most of the times what we do with guys that call us and we're doing those things that you talked about, production calculators, we're talking about, fees analysis. What we're showing them is that, look, there's really nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
Delta's only 500 of your patients.
Don't start on Delta.
Yeah, sorry.
If you ever want to hear like a whole earful about Delta, just call Jeff.
Yeah, but you sit down and you go, hey, look, Blue Cross Blue Shield's only 500 of your patient base of the 1,500.
Right.
Right. And they're responsible for 30% or 20% of your overall production. I was like, so what if you lost it?
Right.
Like, who cares? They're barely doing anything as it is, you know? Like, and you're not going to lose it. Or the other thing where we make them track their dollar value presented. You're like, you presented $220,000 last month. You only produced 80 of it. Like what if we could get a little bit? So once you have that knowingness and that kind of, you give them that safety net, right? Which is all in their data anyway.
Sure.
Like it's not like we're making this stuff up. It then can give you a direction to go, yeah, you're right. Like let's handle one or two of these things and I'll have enough funds to even pay myself, which is amazing.
Well, it also gives them a nice jumping off point to see that it's not just all a pipe dream, that it's actually possible.
Yeah, yeah. And it's real data. Like we're not sitting around there like, oh, well, you had a client come in here talk how he does 400,000. I don't know how he does 400,000. I was like, the same way you would do 400,000. Like that's how, like he started right where you started at 80,
Right.
So, and that's his dream. I don't know what your dream is, whatever you want. But yeah, I mean, the knowingness part has to happen first. Could you place a great ad? Could I look at it for you? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could. I could debug it. Like, there are things you're saying in your ad that aren't helping attract the right person. That's always true too, right? Like there's a lot of things you could be doing in the ad itself, but not placing it enough, not placing it often, not always hiring, not giving out the right money. I tell people just, if you're not getting ads, like you're priced wrong. If you're not getting,
responses.
Just keep raising the dollar value.
What's a form of marketing?
Yeah. Just keep raising the dollar value until you get it. I'm at $28. Well, then that's where the market.
Or maybe what they should do, this is what I was thinking earlier, is, and we do this, if we're going to place an ad, we look at because it's like marketing. If you're marketing your practice, you're looking at, to a degree, doesn't mean you have to change what you're doing, but you at least have to be aware of what your competition is doing. That's marketing 101.
Yeah.
So if I'm competing for potential employees, I should know what the other people who are hiring in my area are doing and paying and what they're offering.
That's right.
And because also I could sound tone deaf otherwise.
What do you gave that example of corporate.
Yeah.
What do you think they did? They went out, they go, we need hygienists.
Right.
So all the private doctors, what are they? Oh, they're doing 50. Let's make it so unreal.
Right.
That they would be stupid not to take our job.
Well, and I think this is where people miss it, because I can understand on the other side of this. Sure. You go, well, I don't want to just pay people who just want money.
I get it.
I don't want to just hire people and that's all they're just here for the money. And I get it. I hate that too. Like if I'm interviewing somebody and the first 5 questions about what I'm going to do for them, I pretty much try to bring that interview to a landing pretty quick. I'm not interested.
Right.
But I do also understand that people need to get paid. I do also understand that prices have gone up. They're also
20%.
right there. Well, gas is by 30%.
goodness,
They're
right.
paying. They're also paying those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And in a lot of cases, they don't have the economic means that an owner doctor has.
Right.
So you have to be real. Like I could see if everybody's offering $20 an hour for a position, I could advertise for 10 just because I'm tone deaf and have no clue what other people are advertising. I'm not going to hire anybody either.
That's right.
Yeah,
Not gonna get
so-
anybody. So there's a lot you can do.
Right. Well, I think this pretty well hits it.
Yeah.
So, folks, I hope this helps. I know we went off and ranted
all
a little bit
over,
here and there.
yeah,
We're all
we-
over the place.
a little bit, yeah.
So it's a staff thing. We give
Yeah.
you a few things you can do about it. I'll also make sure all those links that we mentioned for the, fees and plans analysis, new patient workshop, DDS success, and for the Wasserman guide, I'll make sure those are all on the website if you want to, or not the episode webpage if you want to check it out. Otherwise, look, if you need help, just give someone like Jeff Santone here a call. I'll also put a link to Jeff's email. It's jeffs@mgeonline.com. I'll put it on the episode webpage. Otherwise, I hope this helps. And folks, we will see you at next week's episode. If you want to know more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Thanks a lot and have a great week.